Hello, everyone, and welcome to Surviving Scientology channel on YouTube. I'm coming to you from my wife, Karen de la Carriere, started Surviving Scientology, her channel on YouTube in 2012. So I'm using that platform. Surviving Scientology has a wealth of videos, older, hard to find archival pieces. So I suggest you go visit that. My name, for those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, is Jeffrey Augustine. I'm a longtime Scientology critic. I write under the name of Jay Swift. You may have seen that name. I'm married to Karen de la Carriere, who was a former member of the Church of Scientology and speaks out. And hello, Marla. So I'm coming to you from her channel because I just wanted to introduce you to that channel. I may start working from that channel. I do have my blog called the Scientology Money Project.com. I'm also a licensed private investigator in the Church of Scientology, or licensed private investigator in the state of California, and an investigative journalist. So anyway, I've been around a long time, and I have a heck of a story. And Louis Farrakhan is suing the Anti-Defamation League and the Simon Wiesenthal Center for defamation. This story is interesting on so many levels. And I wanted to talk about it because many people still don't know that the Church of Scientology and the Nation of Islam are aligned. They started getting together around 2008 publicly. And at one time, Mr. Farrakhan, the leader of the Church, the leader of the Nation of Islam, ordered everyone in the church to do Dianetics courses, and that's how it started. Anyway, the story of how the Nation of Islam and the Church of Scientology, how their relationship began, goes back a long way. Essentially, Louis Farrakhan has been receiving Scientology auditing for a long time. He was introduced to Scientology by Scientologist Alfred A. Johnson, who also brought Isaac Hayes into the church. And he brought Tony Muhammad, who's the Western representative for the Nation of Islam, into the Church of Scientology. And the story is that it was Tony Muhammad who brought the minister Farrakhan into Dianetics formally. So this lawsuit, let's just get started, because this is Tom Cruise is involved in this in the background. I'm going to show you why he could have done something about this. Let me show you some of the hypocrisy that's going on, some of the things that Scientology has done wrong, and give you my thoughts on this. So let's just start by sharing the screen. I want to show you a screenshot of the actual lawsuit. So let's go right here. You have to give me a time. I've got a little bit of a lot of things open. Okay, so this is the actual lawsuit. And it was recently filed in the United States District Court, Southern District of New York. The caption, Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, plaintiffs versus Anti-Defamation League Jonathan Greenblatt individually, and in his official capacity as CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, Simon Wiesenthal Center, and Abraham Cooper individually. Now, it says this is a complaint for violation of constitutionally protected rights, defamation, and declaratory relief. That is the lawsuit. And it is a 192-page document. There's over 1,000 pages of exhibits, and we're not going to go all through it, but you can see it's a recitation of the history. We begin with, and this is an interesting thing, point one, it says, quote, this action is brought by the national representative of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, hereinafter Minister Farrakhan, and Muhammad's Holy Temple Incorporated, hereinafter Nation of Islam. What's interesting is that we now know the legal name of the Nation of Islam is Muhammad's Holy Temple of Islam Incorporated. like Scientology, it is a religious corporation. So that's the real name of the Nation of Islam, which I did not know. Muhammad's Holy Temple of Islam Incorporated. And if we go back into the lawsuit, there's a long recitation of the conflicts between the Anti-Defamation League, saying that Minister Farrakhan is anti-Semitic, as is the Nation of Islam, that they, among other things, frankly, it's no surprise the Nation of Islam is a black separatist group. They believe that the Jews are satanic. They believe that white people are racially inferior, and we were created by a black scientist called Yaqub. That's part of their teaching, and that's their teaching, and they own it. They're unapologetic about it, and that's that. It's the same way that Christian fundamentalists are unapologetic about their views on women's rights, that women should be submissive and they're anti-abortion. So every religious group holds their views unapologetically, but when those views are controversial, you're naturally going to run into opposition. So over women's reproductive rights, the Christian groups that Christian Catholic groups that fought very hard to overturn Roe v. Wade have encountered a lot of opposition. And in America, where there's free speech, the debate can get quite heated and intense. And one thing that Louis Farrakhan is complaining about in his lawsuit, that he has been harmed financially because of these accusations made by the Anti-Defamation League and the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And so I want to go back into there. Let's go back to this. And this is what's interesting. Mr. Farrakhan's essentially, as I understand the case, is saying that he has the freedom of speech and he should not be called, here you see point number 6, quote, "This lawsuit is to ensure that the abuse, misuse, and false use of the terms anti-Semite, anti-Semitic, and anti-Semitism is falsely charged by the defendant is permanently barred from being a tool to defame plaintiffs and stifle the exercise of constitutional rights." Now, I have no idea what that means. And what I mean by that is it appears that Mr. Farrakhan would like the ADL to be somehow restrained from using the terms anti-Semite, anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitic from being used. Let's go back and read that again because this was confusing me. 6, this lawsuit is to ensure that the abuse, misuse, and false use of the terms anti-Semite, anti-Semitic, and anti-Semitism is falsely charged by the defendants is permanently barred from being a tool to defame plaintiffs and stifle the exercise of constitutional rights. So if I follow it, and please, if you're a lawyer, you can jump on. I'm going to publish this on my blog, the Scientology Money Project. I'll publish the entire legal complaint and all the exhibits. So Farrakhan does not want the Anti-Defamation League or the Simon Wiesenthal Center to call him an anti-Semite when he's clearly called Jews satanic. He's attacked them. He's made claims, the claims the Jews run Hollywood, the Jews run banking. And so there has been a long, look, Mr. Farrakhan, and I would never disrespect him. I would say what he would do and where I disagree with him, but I do not disrespect him. He has the right to his freedom of religion and expression to his community. But I also have the right to be critical of the Nation of Islam where I don't agree with it. I have the right to argue for their freedom. The Anti-Defamation League, to the extent that they have been attacked by the Nation of Islam, have a right to speak out and to call Mr. Farrakhan an anti-Semite. That's part of free speech. When you take a stand, you'll automatically evoke opposition. And it doesn't matter. There's people following the Israeli-Hamas war that's going on. Some are supporting the rights of the Palestinians. and they're saying that they live in the world's largest open air prison camp. There's those who are protesting for the rights of Israel. So, not speaking that, other than that's a function of free press. And in pure Madisonian democracy, in the Federalist Papers, James Madison said that we have to have a multiplicity of interests in a society. So there's going to be friction, free speech, and you can also in America sue anybody for anything. So this case is interesting. Let's go back to it. So apparently, and I look forward to a statement. Maybe there'll be a clarifying statement from the Nation of Islam. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. They don't want the terms. Mr. Farrakhan does not want the terms anti-Semite, anti-Semitic, and anti-Semitism applied to him. He claims in point 7 that these allegations made by the ADL and the Simon Wiesenthal Center hinder him in carrying out his ministry to the American people. And in point 11 here, quote, plaintiffs seek to find the defendants jointly and severally liable in the amount of $4.8 billion. They want declaratory relief, attorney's fees, and costs, and any other relief as a result of defendants' actions. So Louis Farrakhan says that he has been harmed, in the amount of $4.8 billion because of what the Anti-Defamation League has done, along with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. So that's $4.8 billion. And I'm going to share some other things. And this is a controversial topic, to be sure. But let's jump right into some other things I wanted to show you. I'm going to stop this. Something that I got in, I shared about a long time ago. And I'm going to put this on screen. Now, this is from my blog, and you can see it, Scientology Money Project. I wrote about this on August 7, 2018. What will it take for the Simon Wiesenthal Center to call out the Church of Scientology for supporting Louis Farrakhan? Now, this was my perspective on the matter. This is a press release from the Simon Wiesenthal Center in 2018. It says, and this was, they issued this widely. It says, following Farrakhan's latest anti-Semitic rant, Wiesenthal Center asks, what will it take for political leaders and national media to call him out? So this was a very heated public debate, and this press release was a call to action released March 16, 2018. And this is where I got involved because I was very interested following this. And here's my take on it. Going back to a little bit of history. In 2005, of course, Tom Cruise attacked Brooke Shields and the rights of women to use psychiatric drugs for postpartum depression following the birth of children. He jumped the couch on the Oprah show, which was no big deal, but it was more he was almost engaged in career-ending behavior there in 2005. And he was fired from the Paramount lot by because the CEO of Paramount found that he had engaged in career suicide and over his behavior, and it cost War of the Worlds. That had probably cost the studio $100 million, and that was a big deal. So Tom went into somewhat of a career exile, and he spent some years recovering from it. He revived MGM, and he went through his time of troubles, and he's rehabilitated his image. But one thing that happened, and a lot of new Scientology watchers may not know this, and I'm going to go back to my column. So if we go back, what happened in 2011 when Tom was working on a PR strategy to get back into the mainstream in Hollywood. He was a little bit iffy. He did have some problems for a while. But in 2011, the Simon Wiesenthal Center here in Los Angeles gave Tom Cruise a humanitarian medal, its highest award that it gives. This created a great deal of controversy at the time. And the reason it created a great deal of controversy was because Scientology critics, people in Hollywood, many felt the Simon Wiesenthal Center was being hypocritical because Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, and Scientology had licensed the Nation of Islam to use its technology of Dianetics and Scientology. So, in other words, Scientology leader David Miscavige, who controls all the licensing of what's called the technology by Scientology, and that includes Dianetics. Scientology leader David Miscavige had licensed an anti-Semite group, a black separatist group, to use Dianetics and Scientology. And Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam they oppose the Jewish people. They believe that Jews are satanic. Now, Mr. Farrakhan has tried to spin this by saying he wanted to separate the good Jews from the bad Jews. I don't know how you do that. He doesn't specify. And so some people said, why, Simon Wiesenthal Center, are you giving Tom Cruise a medal? Such recognition. Now, Rabbi Marvin Ayers said, well, we're trying to not engage in guilt by association, which I felt was a deflection, because that would be saying that someone who's associated with a group like Scientology is not guilty of association just because they belong to Scientology. It's a non sequitur. Tom Cruise's donations empowered forced abortions of female Sea Org members, child labor, fair game. His money donated it, and the Jewish people are very much into collective responsibility, the whole idea of collective responsibility. So for Rabbi Ayer to try to pivot and say, yes, Scientology does bad things, but we're not attributing that to Tom Cruise, to me, that was just a falsehood. I contacted personally the Simon Wiesenthal Center several times and suggested that if they're so distressed by Louis Farrakhan's anti-Semitism, that they do the following. They contact their honoree, Tom Cruise, and they have Tom Cruise contact his best friend, Scientology leader David Miscavige, who would notify Louis Farrakhan and say, look, if you do not cease and desist in your anti-Semitism, I, David Miscavige, will revoke your licensing rights to use the technology of Scientology and Dianetics. You can no longer practice it. We will revoke all licenses. And that would have been a very easy thing to do. Tom Cruise could have picked up the telephone and called the Nation of Islam and said, hey, you're going to have to deal with this issue. Scientology has long claimed to be an interfaith group, but it's not really an interfaith group. It does that for PR. So why did David Miscavige license the Nation of Islam, an anti-Semitic group, to use Dianetics and Scientology? Why were there no terms and conditions? That's a question that the Church of Scientology has never answered. Now, it was brought up at the time that L. Ron Hubbard used the N-word. That's widely documented, and I have that on my blog. The Church of Scientology in that time period tried to say that the use of the N-word of the 1950s was in common use, and Hubbard was just doing what every other white person was doing. That was their excuse. But Hubbard was not supposed to be every other white person. He was supposed to be a singular individual in all of the human race. He was supposed to be the only person in the human race who actually came from another planet to help humanity. And Mr. Farrakhan excused Hubbard's racism by saying that if Black people had went to college, they went there to get an education, to get the benefits, and they didn't ask their professors how many times they'd used the N-word. So Hubbard's racism was dismissed by Mr. Farrakhan because Mr. Farrakhan felt that the benefits that the Nation of Islam could get from Scientology and Dianetics outweighed Mr. Hubbard's racism. In any case, it was inconsequential. So here you had the Simon Wiesenthal Center refusing to ask their honoree Tom Cruise to intervene in this matter, to restrain Louis Farrakhan from engaging anti-Semitic behavior that the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the Anti-Defamation League found so distressing to be attacked. And you had Louis Farrakhan dismissing L. Ron Hubbard's racism, which is documented, as I said. So this is an interesting. This is very. It involves a lot of things, but I'm going to go back and show you. Okay, so Tom Cruise received the medal, and if we go back. We're going to go to the college. Just give me a minute. So he received the medal, and I want to go back to that column and share that with you. Okay, so we're back there. Now, this was a picture of Tom Cruise receiving the medal. And so there's a couple things that were going on. The Simon Wiesenthal Center did not want to involve Tom Cruise in this. So they can't have it both ways. They're asking political leaders and national media to call out Louis Farrakhan for being anti-Semitic, and yet they have all the leverage they need if they ask Tom Cruise to convince David Miscavige to delicense, to revoke the licensing for the Nation of Islam. That's a control point they didn't use. And why the Simon Wiesenthal Center refused to use that leverage, that's a question that I've asked them many times. They won't respond to my emails, and I do have the emails. I did make phone calls, and so that's on the Simon Wiesenthal Center. They didn't use the assets they had. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. Tom Cruise is perfectly capable of doing it. I wanted to show you a couple of other things that we discussed. I showed earlier in another podcast I did recently. This is Tom Cruise, the ultimate billion-dollar show for Scientology and his little-known Scientology work in South America. I did this podcast recently. Now, Scientology needed access to Interpol files. So when Tom Cruise was making Air America in 2015, he met with a Colombian police general named Carlos Romero Mina Bravo. And this is him. Now, why is this important to our conversation? Well, it shows that when Scientology needs Tom Cruise to do things at a high level, including meeting a Colombian police general, Tom Cruise will get involved as a Scientology intelligence asset. Now, because General Mina Bravo was in charge of Interpol for Colombia, this, I allege, gave Scientology access to Interpol files on cases in Europe, especially Belgium, some legal cases. General Mina Bravo would later emerge. He is the general who gave, after his retirement from the Colombian police, he gave David Miscavige the medal in front of the Freewind ship in Barbados. And this created a huge, huge storm in Colombia. There was outrage. Colombia's police chief embarrassed over unauthorized decoration. Mina Bravo had retired, and yet because he had met with Tom Cruise, he was induced, paid, possibly, to give David Miscavige a medal, because this is when David Miscavige was having hard times as well, and he wanted this to show to Scientologists. This is another picture up close of Tom meeting with the top police general in Colombia as an intelligence asset. Just as an aside, Mina Bravo was later criminally charged for omitting certain of his duties. And that's getting a little off the tangent, but that did happen. Another thing I wanted to show you is that there's going to be another screen, so let me go to it. So Tom Cruise has been used, and I'm going to show you another screen. Now, this is from Unredacted, and this is the time when then Vice President Dick Cheney's chief of staff, Scooter Libby, took a meeting with Tom Cruise and Penelope Cruz when he was dating Penelope Cruz. And this Tom met Vice President Dick Cheney's chief of staff to talk about getting help. Scientology felt it was being persecuted in Germany. And so you have Tom operating at these high levels as a Scientology intelligent asset to try to get favorable treatment for the church. And this is discussed. So it's interesting that Tom Cruise stayed out of the entire Nation of Islam affair, but the church will use him when it needs to go to the White House, when it needs to go to Congress, when it needs to see a governor of a state, or anything else. But they kept him out of this matter of the Nation of Islam. So Tom Cruise is definitely, it's interesting to me that Tom Cruise has a screen life where he plays, sometimes he's played a spy, an agent, an action figure. But in real life, he acts as an intelligence officer for Scientology, and he cultivates influence. He uses his celebrity and connections for that. So there is an analog to the characters he plays. He plays an action hero, but in real life, he's a Scientology intelligence operative. That's my view of Tom Cruise. And the church deploys him. And Tom Cruise, embarrassingly, I think, praised when he received his medal from David Miscavige. He said that David Miscavige was the leader of leaders. And that's ridiculous. So my wife, Karen, my lovely wife, Karen, let's show this. I just Googled to see how many people ever won a $5 billion lawsuit. All 5 billion. It was Johnson and Johnson and FTC on a huge national drug issue. Thank you. So, um, yeah, Farrakhan's asking for $4.8 billion. He would have to prove at trial, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm offering my opinion, but he would have to prove at trial that the Nation of Islam has been harmed in the amount of $4.8 billion. And that would, of course, require them during discovery to show how much money they've ever made in their entire history. And this, again, is Muhammad's Holy Temple of Islam Incorporated. So they would have to demonstrate that the Anti-Defamation League and the Simon Wiesenthal Center have financially damaged them in the amount of $4.8 billion because they've called them anti-Semites. It's interesting that Louis Farrakhan, again, wants it both ways. He wants to be free to say whatever he wants, to call the Jews satanic, and to attack them as controlling international financing, Hollywood, and so on. And yet he doesn't want the pushback that happens with free speech. He doesn't want the consequences. You can't have it both ways. Any position you take, whether you're pro-gun, the people who oppose assault weapons will come after you. If you're pro-abortion, people who are against abortion will come after you. So any position creates opposition. So in my view, it's unrealistic. This lawsuit is unrealistic. And it may signal a couple things, that Mr. Farrakhan at age 90 is wanting to make a statement. And he's wanting to have this final legal battle with his long-term enemies, because the ADL has kept him on its radar for a long time, has reported on him. I want to show you Scientology wants to do the same thing. And I'm going to illustrate that Scientology wants the same freedom. Back when the internet began, Scientology lawyer Helena Cobran and the other Scientology lawyers in the church itself said, freedom of speech is not the freedom to attack a religion. And that's a non sequitur. First of all, look at the phrasing of this. This is propaganda. Freedom of speech is not freedom to attack a religion. Freedom of speech allows you to criticize a religion. Scientology substitutes the word attack, and they say, how dare you attack my religion? So you can see this is propaganda. They want to attack psychiatry. They want to call non-Scientologists suppressive persons, wogs, homo saps. So Scientology wants the same thing Louis Farrakhan wants. They want to attack everything and everyone and not have any pushback. So they want to use religion as both a sword and a shield. And I have a stellar example of this I want to show you. Now, I've covered Megan Epstein and her husband, Stephen Epstein, who are Scientologists in the Nashville area, real estate developers. And they're part of a group, part of a group of Scientologists who want to control downtown Clearwater, other parts of Clearwater. And that's a different story. So I'm going to show you something that stakes out their position. Now, Meg Epstein, this is Tech Bullion website. Meg does a lot of PR. I think she has a PR agent, or she does it herself, but she has a lot of it. So Meg Epstein on Scientology, religious discrimination, and religious freedom. This I'll reference in the show notes. I thought this piece shows not just Meg Epstein being self-serving as a Scientologist, but also the Church of Scientology. A couple things. She's talking about the importance of religious freedom. It says Meg Epstein here. Meg Epstein, let me get that. Meg Epstein and other business leaders. I thought, oh, who are the other business leaders? And that took me over to Meg Epstein's page where she has 4 followers. So, Meg Epstein has 4 followers, and we'll go back to there. That's not showing on screen. Let me just share that. Anyway, Meg Epstein, let me see if I can make this larger. Okay, so what she's saying is, this is her position. Okay, let me get this highlighted. Meg Epstein and other business leaders are standing up for more religious freedom, a freedom which is not simply the right to attend the church of your choice, but to worship and practice without discrimination or being attacked on blogs, websites, or otherwise by detractors. So look at this, what Meg Epstein and Scientology wants. And it's very, very unrealistic. They want it both ways. They're allowed to attend the church of their choice and worship and practice without discrimination. They can do that. But this thing, they do not want to be attacked on blogs, websites, or otherwise by detractors. Well, see, this is the hypocrisy. Scientology wants to attack, again, psychiatry, suppressive persons. Scientology wants to attack Disney when they had Leah Remini's show on through A&E. They want to attack the New York Times. They want to attack Pulitzer Prize winner Lawrence Wright for his book When Clear, Alex Gibney when he made the documentary. So Scientology wants to attack anyone and everyone, and they do it on their hate websites on Twitter, or their hate websites and on Twitter. And that's why Leah Remini is suing them for defamation. So Scientology says we should be allowed to express ourselves without being attacked on blogs, websites, or by detractors. Well, no, you can use the word attack, but it's not attack, it's criticism and it's free speech. What you want, free speech, is what it comes with criticism. And I have hate websites on me by the Church of Scientology. They're false, defamatory. So does my wife. So does anyone who speaks out against the church. So this is why the church is delusional, self-serving, deceptive, deceitful, dishonest. You don't get it both ways, Meg Epstein or the Church of Scientology. And that's reprehensible. And it looks like maybe Louis Farrakhan, I'm wondering about the connections with Leah Remini's lawsuit. The Church of Scientology is trying to say that, well, we weren't slandering or libeling or defaming Leah Remini. We were engaging in free speech. It was really quite vicious. And I saw the stacks of protest letters that Scientologists wrote in asking A&E to take off Leah's show off the air. And Scientology's fair game policy, if you speak out against them, if you exercise in free speech, they'll try to get you fired from your job. They'll try to cost you that which is most precious to you. They'll fair game you. And they do that with Tom Cruise's donations. So for Rabbi Marvin Air to say, we don't want to associate Tom with the actions of his church, that doesn't work, Rabbi Air. And I'm glad you fight Holocaust deniers and keep the museum going and make the world aware of the Holocaust. And you make a lot of money doing it. That's your right to make a lot of money. Foundation can pay you whatever it wants, but you make a lot of money. And you have a lot of politics. But you don't get, in my opinion, you don't get to get away with having it both ways. We're going to give Tom Cruise our highest award, but we're not going to call him into account for the group to which he belongs. That'd be like taking a member of Al-Qaeda and saying, we're going to give you an award, but we're not going to associate you with Al Qaeda because you're only on the periphery and you haven't actually engaged in anything. When you belong to a group, it's not guilt by association. You belong to the group. You belong to the actual group, and your money, the money Tom Cruise makes went from a film because he has huge earnings from his films and he donates those to Scientology and they go to fair game. So I don't know. And they go also to David Miscavige. Part of that money goes to David Miscavige, who licenses the Nation of Islam. So this is really interesting how much goes on. And let's go to a couple other things. So I want to go back to Megan Epstein. So this is Meg Epstein's page. She has 4 followers on Medium with 1 following. Not very impressive, but that was the article referenced. And if we go back to what she's asking for, I want to just hammer home this point. So Meg Epstein again, and she's a developer, Nashville, and this is what they're trying to stake out. Meg Epstein and other business leaders are standing up for more religious freedom, a freedom which is not simply the right to attend the church of your choice, but to worship and practice without discrimination or being attacked on blogs, websites, or otherwise by detractors. That is so naive, unrealistic, self-serving. So the reason I'm saying that Meg Epstein is she's spoken out against psychiatric drugs. And that is something that she could be criticized for. She's taken the position that Scientologists are a race of beings that are beyond human. They're called Homo novus, the new man. Embedded in L. Ron Hubbard's book, 1951, Science of Survival, is a call for a genocide against all people 2.0 or below on the tone scale. So along with Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Meg Epstein, Trish Duggan, everyone else in the Church of Scientology, there is a call for a genocide. Hubbard said that the way you handle people 2.0 or below on the tone scale is to audit them or dispose of them quietly and without sorrow. And he said that there was a Venezuelan dictator who noted that all the beggars in Venezuela were also lepers. So to get rid of leprosy, you just had to destroy the beggars. One thing that Louis Farrakhan said that was very inflammatory is he said that the Jews were termites, which was chilling to me, because what do you do with termites in your home? You call an exterminator. So there's genocidal overtones in Scientology. Mr. Farrakhan's remarks that Jews were termites, he tried to walk back, but it's pretty chilling when you think about it. And Mr. Farrakhan apparently wants to be able to engage in anti-Semitism with no penalty, and he wants $4.8 billion in damages because he's felt he's been damaged. Going back to the lawsuit, let's change screens and go back to the lawsuit because this bears looking at some more. So if we go back to the lawsuit, there is a, sorry for the flicker, there's quite a bit of a recitation of the history going back between Louis Farrakhan, and this even includes the FBI, things that went on in the 60s. It's well worth reading to get Mr. Farrakhan's point of view, in all fairness to him, to get his point of view. It gives an interesting history. There's a lot of details. The FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. So there's quite a bit of history, and this will give you, especially if you're a religious scholar or you study the history of American groups in America that are religious in nature, Um, this gives some details that I hadn't seen before. It was a very illuminating read. Uh, it'll be interesting to see the ADL's position against it, how they answer the complaint. And it concerns vaccination. And I'm scrolling through this to show you the length of this 192-page document. And they have some pictures. I did want to go back to page 46 because that caught my eye. So let me just go down there. Page 46. And this shows a particular sensitivity. Now, here on page 46, Louis Farrakhan does something very interesting. He singles out the top people in the Nation of Islam who he felt the ADL cited as anti-Semites. And that includes Riza Islam, and that also includes Reverend Tony Muhammad, most prominently, who was recently involved in Peacecoin, a parent cryptocurrency that I think has fallen apart. And his business partner, Armin Tumurian, has been charged on, that's an unrelated matter. But this is the detail. It shows how the Nation of Islam is monitoring social media. It's on social media, but they're saying that they think this particular group of NOI members, including Fruit of Islam members, that's the Nation Sea Org, if you will. So that's how detailed it gets down into is screenshots. And if you go down through it, and like I said, I'm going to post the exhibits that go on and on and on. Let me just scroll real fast. Okay. So these are the exhibits, and they have letters going back and forth. So the correspondence is there, and there's some history. I don't know what the answer will be from the ADL, and some of this material is older, but but my point is there is a long recitation of things, and I want to show you a few more things. So Tom Cruise is involved in this to the extent that he could have done something about it. He could have asked David Miscavige to, if Tom Cruise, and he's worked with Steven Spielberg, he's been very supportive of the Jewish community in Hollywood, and yet he's done nothing to stop the anti-Semitism of the Nation of Islam when he has the power to do so through David Miscavige's best friend. So that's my question to you, Tom Cruise. Why? Why did you stay silent on the Nation of Islam's anti-Semitism when you're working in Hollywood with Steven Spielberg and other prominent Jews, Jeffrey Katzenberg? Why? Why the silence? Is that to your disgrace? That's certainly nothing you can be proud of. And that's part of your position as being an opinion leader in Scientology, and also one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. You have the power to do something about this, and you chose not to. Even your own church said their motto is something can be done about it, and yet, Tom Cruise, you've chosen to do nothing about it. Your silence is condemnation. So in this particular issue, what will Scientology do? One of the questions that's been raised recently is, what is the current state of affairs between the Nation of Islam and the Church of Scientology? I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is because the church has issued no formal statement, nor has the Nation of Islam. So we're going to look at a few other things I want to share with you. This is from a Scientology website, and this is the Hateful Stand League. These are where all the, I say, quite viciously hostile, sadistic people work. Scientology says that they are vocal in their demands for accurate, unbiased journalism. Well, that gets very interesting, doesn't it? Scientology is very vocal in their demands for unbiased journalism. Well, when we produce court cases, evidence, documents, that's unbiased. I, along with others, covered the Danny Masterson rape trial here in Los Angeles. That was unbiased testimony. A jury of Mr. Masterson's peers found him guilty of 2 counts of sexual assault. Scientology never covered it, never commented on it, never got involved. So they say they want accurate, unbiased journalism, and yet Scientology never gives us accurate, unbiased journalism. They don't. Everything they say can be proven to be demonstrably untrue or false. And I'm going to do another video where David Miscavige made claims. I'm going to do another video shortly of David Miscavige's 3 main claims he made at the recent IES event. He claimed that Scientology helped to reduce suicide in Japan by 34%, when the actual scientific literature, which I've studied, shows it didn't happen. Suicide is a big problem in Japan. So Scientology, if you want accurate, unbiased journalism, you should start practicing it, because you're not. In fact, your own leader is lying. You did not reduce crime in Colombia by 50% or suicide in Japan by 34%. So it's just a matter they don't practice what they preach. And Scientology says, we believe discriminatory rhetoric, misinformation, and hate speech have no place in reporting about any group. Well, look at your own Twitter feed and how much discriminatory rhetoric, misinformation, and hate speech you practice on Twitter and on your Stan League. You guys, frankly, are full of shit. I'm going to be that blunt. And then they go on to pontificate, quote, at its best, responsible journalism enhances a society by empowering people with truth. Oh, really? Then why don't you publish the truth about the Danny Masterson, what you covered up with Danny? Why don't you put out all the information on Danny Masterson, what you covered up, what you hid? Why don't you, and that's another thing. I just want to make a point about, I'm here on live stream, Aaron Smith 11 live streams, Apostate Alex, my wife, Karen Della Carrier, Tony Ortega, Chris Shelton. People live stream and we interact with our audiences. David Miscavige, leader of the Church of Scientology, has never done a live stream. He's never interacted with the world. The one thing I admire about Mr. Farrakhan is he will take the heat. He'll get up there on the podium and he will take the heat and he will interact with culture. I admire that about him. He'll take the heat. He's got big shoulders. David Miscavige, in hiding, which is very low on the tone scale. He's never done a live stream. He appeared once on Scientology TV to launch it. But would you ever see him on YouTube interacting with all people, including his critics, like Louis Farrakhan does? No. In fact, something I pointed out before, there's no known picture of Louis Farrakhan and David Miscavige together. And I've always thought that Louis Farrakhan is smart and he would never let himself be seen with David Miscavige. If there is one question I could ask Mr. Farrakhan, and I would like to meet him. Mr. Farrakhan, what do you think of David Miscavige and his leadership of the Church of Scientology? I've always wanted to know that, what Mr. Farrakhan really thinks. So that's just a question I have. Back to Scientology, it says, quote, at its worst, irresponsible journalism marginalizes communities, fuels bigotry, and incites hate. It can thereby endanger lives. Yeah, Scientology certainly fuels bigotry and incites hate, and that's all it does. So Scientology does not practice what it preaches by any means. If you look at any copy of Freedom Magazine and what they say, or any Scientology magazines, or what David Miscavige says, you can go through and say they don't practice responsible journalism. Let's look at a few more things I had up for you to share. This is something Scientology does. This is from Google Images. I put in Scientology interfaith. And the main thing Scientology is trying to communicate is they use their centers. Here, we'll look at this picture here. And let me make sure that's up on the screen. Okay, so this is a picture of an typical interfaith meeting. And what Scientology is trying to get the message across is they're welcoming of all faith. But what my question to Scientology is, if the Nation of Islam is anti-Semitic and they believe that whites are inferior, racially inferior per their doctrine, and you're going to have interfaith meetings with them, and David Miscavige will even license them, give them a license to practice Scientology. How do you square that? You talk about in your propaganda that all people are equal. The Nation of Islam does not teach that. They teach the racial inferiority of whites, and that's their right to teach whatever they want. And it's also they're going to get pushback too for that. So how does Scientology square interfaith groups where some of these groups are quite hostile, quite deviant? How do they do that? How do they put that together? I don't know. It's strictly for PR. So again, to go back, this is Scientology's typical stance, is that we're interfaith. We're an interfaith group, and this is all PR. Because really, what Scientology, this is an interesting point that's been brought up many times before, is that when you join the Church of Scientology, you're expected to devote yourself to Scientology to the exclusion of your practice. So for example, Monique Yingling, and I believe she was the one who did the writing in the application, the 1023 application for Scientology's 1993 tax exemption. She said Scientologists are expected to drop their faith in favor of being exclusively Scientologists, and but they can culturally or ceremonially practice other observances. So my question regarding Nation of Islam, were they expected to become Scientologists to the exclusion of Nation of Islam? So it's always been a curious pairing, and that's just it. So Louis Farrakhan, who's a Scientologist because he very much embraced L. Ron Hubbard, but he kept his identity as the leader of the Nation of Islam, has a $4.8 billion lawsuit against the Anti-Defamation League. And I'm going to be reporting. I'm really curious on how the ADL and Simon Wiesenthal Center will respond to this. I'm curious if Tom Cruise will respond to this. I doubt it. He tends to stay away from Scientology, though he did appear at the recent International Association of Scientologists event, which Apostate Alex did such a good job of covering. So let's get this comment up. Heavy mist worker. Blinky Face Yingling would appear on the Apostate Alex channel before Captain Davey ever would. Yeah, you know what's interesting, Heavy mist worker, is whenever, here's a barometer of David Miscavige's psyche. Whenever he's really in trouble and feels fear, he'll have Monique Yingling appear for him. He won't go on TV to take the heat. He will have Monique Yingling appear for him. And Monique Yingling is not even a Scientologist. She's not even a Scientologist. And yet when push comes to shove and something gets heavy, she's the de facto church spokesman. So to a point Mike Rinder made, no, they don't have a church spokesman. They have a lawyer go on acting as the church spokesman, which is amazing because Scientology is supposed to be all about communication. You're supposed to be able to communicate with anybody about anything. But David Miscavige has never done a live stream, will never do a live stream. Louis Farrakhan does. He holds press conferences. He's out there regularly in social media, taking all the slings and arrows. David Miscavige, no, you can't even serve him a subpoena. So that's pretty amazing. So I'm going to go back. Let's get back here. Let me scroll this up. So that's the news, and we end where we started again. Louis Farrakhan is demanding a jury trial, and he's suing the Anti-Defamation League, Mr. Greenblatt, and the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Mr. Cooper. Complaint for violation of constitutionally protected rights. I'm not even sure how this works out. They've called him an anti-Semite over the years. He wants to somehow restrain them, stop them from doing this, and he wants $4.8 billion. This is the amazing thing. This is the amazing thing about Scientology. You never know what's going to happen next. I would have never predicted that Louis Farrakhan at age 90 would sue the ADL and the Simon Wiesenthal Center for $4.8 billion. Amazing stuff. So for Surviving Scientology channel on YouTube, this is Jeffrey Augustine. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to be covering this story. I'll be staying on top of it, but at least know the lawsuit will be posted on my blog along with this video. And because there's over 1,000 pages of exhibits, I'm going to have to get those off Pacer and download this in probably 2 or 3 tranches and then put them on post. But they will be on the Scientology Money Project. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to Surviving Scientology channel on YouTube. Give us a like for Surviving Scientology. This is Jeffrey Augustine. My lovely wife, Carangela Carrier, watching, and wishing you the best until we talk to you next time. Thank you for watching. And Apostate Alex, thank you for modding.